Hi, Funzo.
Luendo.
How are you, friend?
Well, and yourself?
Good. So the people don't know, we're here at the Javett-Up Center. We are discussing your wonderful award-winning book,
That's right. Can you
with
believe
Khotsi
it?
and Sako. Well done.
Award winner.
But I guess the big and the starting point question would be, where are we? What is the Javett-Art Center? I'm the curator of public engagement here, but you know the story far beyond what I do, because you were here from, what, ground zero to ground zero?
Not necessarily ground zero, but yeah, I was here before the space opened. So I was introduced to the space in 2017, invited by Bongidomo, who's the subject of the book.
Yeah?
And the establishment of the Javett Art Center is really the vision of Michael Javett, who was the chief benefactor in getting this space built. And he had a family collection, the Javett family collection, which I'm sure you're well aware of.
Yeah.
But when he was thinking about the function of this space,
Yeah.
he knew that his family collection was limited in scope and narrative and representation, the type of artists that were part of that collection and the type of stories that were catalogued in the artworks in that collection.
Yeah.
So the involvement of Bongi Dlomo in the center
Yeah.
really stems from that he invited her to establish a art collection that would sit alongside his family collection, that would tell a more complete story, not the complete story, but a more complete story of South Africa.
Yeah.
And interestingly, we're having a discussion around human rights and all of that. So in many respects, he was aware of the importance of having a balanced engagement when it comes to telling the South African narrative. And so 2017, that's how I got involved with the Bongi Dlomo Collection project, which, so as you can tell, it predates the opening of the center.
Yeah.
And in many respects, it is, as I said, foundational to the work that the center hopes to achieve. And I'm delighted that you guys are taking Michael's vision forward. You are actualizing his dream.
I mean, I think, firstly, though, it's kind of the concept of a collection, right? And I think for us, when we work in the arts, we kind of get comfortable around these words. If someone didn't know what a collection was, because obviously we think of it like a collection of shoes or a collection of, those doilies, or, like these small things, small artifacts, right? That we all have in our lives. So from your perspective, what is the value of a collection?
But I like that you bring in those everyday examples, because we can get tempted to abstract these institutional collections, and I'll talk about that in a moment, these institutional collections, away from the personal, private collections that we have at our homes that have some kind of symbolic value, family value, very personal value. So those collections are very similar to the way that these collections work at private or public museums of this nature. The major difference, of course, is the fact that they are, and I use that word again, institutionalized. Which is to say that they are given some kind of significance and prominence and value that transcends the ordinariness or everydayness of the examples that you just cited for us. So in that sense, these type of collections that we house here and spend millions of rands to preserve and appoint professionals like yourself to oversee and disseminate to the public are important because we have given them that value. Right? It's not a naturalized value that comes from above. We have decided that these collections are significant and that they have to be preserved in a space like this. So that's the kind of fundamental difference between ordinary everyday collections and the collections that find life in these museums or citadels of history.
I mean, Citadel is right, because it's quite like a big, I mean, the collection itself that we're talking about is the Bongi Lomo collection,
Yeah.
and that's about, what, 138 artworks?
That's right.
So it's 138 artworks that are collected to reflect, what, the 20th century? Black 20th century art, right? Because we also move as a country, and art is never stagnant.
Yeah.
Art never just kind of stays. So for a long time, we're actually sitting in a space called Township Tales. So for a long time, black art was characterized
Township art.
as township arts. And then we have 1994 happen, and then obviously some people come to prominence. But the collection veers a little bit between that kind of township art, modern art, contemporary art, because yes, it ends in about, what, 2000?
Yep.
2000 is like the gap, so it's what, 1940?
Right up to 2000. So
That's
60 years.
60 years of works, and it's 138 works over that kind of time period. So if we were like talking in the collection, talk us through how you decide. How do you make the decisions about what goes in and what's left out?
That is a fantastic question, because traditionally our understanding of institutional collections, especially those that are in public museums, I think for the private ones, we do understand that they come from a specific individual, but certainly the public ones is that, oh, there must have been some committee that met and decided, and there was a whole host of criteria that we need to have this type of representation, and we need to include those stories and those artists. But actually, collections are extremely idiosyncratic, which is to say that they're personalized, because even at public institutions, even at institutions of this nature, it's still individuals like yourselves, right, that are running these spaces and deciding, even when you're curating, you are deciding which works will be shown, which works won't be shown. So with regards to the Bongi Dlomo collection, what is so fascinating is Michael Javett, who is the visionary and benefactor who dreamed up the Bongi Dlomo collection, he gave Bongi Dlomo that free reign for her to collect whatever art she liked. So there wasn't any provisos, or I mean, there were parameters that it has to be 20th century, because his family collection is mostly 20th century, so he wanted them to sit alongside each other. But for the most part, he said, Bongi Dlomo, I want you to collect art that you like. This is not going to be art by committee. We are not going to sit and put together a collections policy this is how you need to collect. And that is unusual for an institutional size collection of this nature. And it brings to bear many interesting vectors and points of departure in how we think about historical collections and even collections moving forward. And the issue of, again, we're talking human rights. How do we center the individual in that? This is a very much individual collection, and that's why it's named the Bongi Dlomo collection. I'm sure Bongi Dlomo could have chosen any other designator for it, but she settled on the Bongi Dlomo collection.
But no, it's definitely we, because you go through it in the book about how it came about. And Mambongi is actually not the type of woman who will, I mean, even though there are 138 works, there's what, about 2 or 3 of her own works? And she's a well-established artist with her own retrospective. So, I mean, if I was given a blank check and I was a working artist at that time, I definitely would be tempted to like inflate, you know,
include your friends,
just only my friends or people I know, right? But she didn't do that. She took this like mantle so seriously, and she really went. And she asked a lot of difficult questions about what is a 20th century framing. One of the main points that you actually do make in the book is comparing Mambongi to some of her female contemporaries who were not black women, and the prominence that they have compared to where Mambongi is. Because like her story is really prolific, and you go through it quite a lot. But that thing, you know, I don't think there is, unless I'm mistaken, is there another collection of this size and magnitude named after a black South African woman in this country?
Excellent question. And to your point, so there were works that were exhibited, there were her works that were exhibited in the Yakalinkomo exhibition, an important exhibition which people must check out online, whatever online presence exists of that exhibition, which introduced the Bongi Dlomo collection for the first time to audiences. So her works existed in the exhibition, but none of her works actually exist in the collection.
What?
Believe you me.
So nothing?
Nothing. the collection is named after her, and you are right, she's a practicing artist.
Yeah.
And you are right, if it were anyone else, the first artwork that they would have included in that collection would have been their own work. She didn't, which is profound and says so much about the responsibility that she took upon herself to make sure that this story transcends beyond her own life. Of course, her life, as you've just noted, is interweaved into the story of South African art, or the history of South African art. But she was very sensitive to the meaning of this opportunity that she was given, a unique opportunity, where she understood, to your question, that there aren't any other examples of a collection this size, this nature, of this nature, that is named after a black woman. And so she took it upon herself to say, yes, although Michael had given her free rein and said, you can collect any art, including her own art, including, her husband, Pat Mauka. None of his works are in the collection as well.
Wow. That must have made for a nice dinner conversation.
I can imagine, right? But imagine that she no nepotism whatsoever in this project, which again just signals the uniqueness of this project. Yes, it's named after Bongi Domo. Yes, it's very much a story of how she transcended the many difficulties as a black woman that she had to transcend over the last 40 years that she's been involved in the visual arts in our country. But she was determined to say that this will be our story, that this will be a collective conversation, that she will bring in other voices of other black women, of other black artists, marginalized artists that she knew, artists that she didn't know. Many of the artists in the collection she knew, many of the artists she didn't know. She might have admired their work, seen their work somewhere, heard about them, but she was prepared to be open. So that's what makes the story fascinating.
So then, but one of the not issues, I don't want to call it an issues, but one of the things or the critiques that comes about the collection is actually the absence of women. Some of it, you guys do explain it as a historical thing about like the limitations of black women who are practicing artists at the time, but there are other collections which highlight, another narrative. So I like what you said right at the beginning about this is not the story. This is not the complete story. This is the start of the story. So to that kind of question, how do we integrate this kind of gendered lens that there is kind of absent, but it was because the word curator comes from care, right? So the purpose of a curator is to care for the works, right? And then after that, now it becomes issues of selection and it becomes issues of design and where you put things, and that's what people think of when they think of curator. But there's care, but now you have care, which is always considered female work. Curatorial work is considered masculine work.
Of course, because it's intellectual, right? You think. When you're curating, when you're doing women's work, it's about feeling.
Exactly. So that moment, that historical kind of break away from what was then to what is now. How do we make this gap? What do we do with this gap?
That is an excellent question, and I don't think we have an answer for it. But only to say that the fact that you're asking that question is exactly the point at which we need to begin.
Okay.
You are precisely correct in that one of the contradictions is, hey, this is a collection that has been put together by a black woman. Why are there so few black women here? When you consider the amazing work that curators like Posha Malachi and Nontombe Kontombela have done with When Rain Clouds Gather, an exhibit that both of us admire, transformational, and I do not use this word lightly when I say that exhibition really changed my perspective on South African art.
100%.
Yeah,
100%.
Completely. Just changed the game. So why the Bongi Domo collection has not been able to do that? And that's a good place to start critiquing, because that means we can take this conversation forward. That means the next iteration of this can move even further beyond what Bongi Domo was able to achieve, because there are certainly major accomplishments here, but there are also some deficiencies, and and she acknowledges it. She acknowledges it. I think what is what is unusual about Mambongi's story in the context of South African art is for a long time she was never considered a curator.
Really?
No. She actually started curating way back in the early 80s.
Okay.
When we went through and we
Yeah, of course,
cataloged
yeah.
some of those examples, that her first curated show at the African Art Center in Durban,
Yeah.
1980, if I'm not mistaken, it could be 81, but early 80s. But the idea that a black woman could be a curator at that time was just too far-fetched. So she was an administrator, right?
She was an art administrator.
Yeah, not. I think that's too nice. Art administrator, no, just an administrator, just an office person that was assisting in getting the drinks ready for the show. But when she actually curated these shows, and she goes on to highlight how even during her time at important historical black institutions like FUBA, Federated Union of Black Artists, which we venerate and put up on a pedestal. Even there, the curatorial work that she was doing was not considered curatorial work. Right through till the Johannesburg Biennale of 1996, the first one, and 95, and then the second one, 97. So the fact that right now we are able to rewrite her history and insert the word curator as being part and parcel of her story, that's one of the triumphs.
So when would you say Mambongi was, I mean, I don't even know if she's really received her flowers.
So it's not to say that she has never been acknowledged. The very fact that all of us knew her before we met her. Right? The first time I received an email from her, so my goodness, Mambongi, I've read about her and seen the work that she's done, speaks to a certain level of appreciation that she had received. But at the same time, it was always tempered by the non-acknowledgement of the true impact that she has had on South African art. And there are so many examples I could cite, but at this point in time, suffices to say that the kind of accolades that this project is receiving, even
we have to talk about this.
Speaks to the uniqueness of the story. So on the one hand, I'll acknowledge that the accolade speaks to, well, there must have been good writing that happened.
There was very good writing that happened.
But I think more so it's about how compelling the story is. Right? The story itself is worth telling. And because it's a story of South Africa. It's a story of how someone has struggled to obtain her rights within this domain of the visual arts. Highly male, you know this, highly male-centric. Even though there is a lot of visibility of women, the visibility is there, but that does not necessarily relate to the power dynamics. So it's a story of that, how she triumphed over some really difficult experiences. Pumla Gola writes this amazing book, Female Fear Factory, which actually won this very same award last year. So it's like, I'm in good company. But I find it interesting that there's this kind of trajectory between Female Fear Factory winning and then Mihloti Yansako winning, because in many respects, Mambongi represents the archetypal black woman who shattered that factory.
That's true.
Her whole story has been an attempt to burn that factory down. Say, actually, I am in this male-centric, male-dominated, I will still work, right? Be the cultural worker that she has been.
I think, so for me, even the word cultural worker sometimes feels very South African, right? I don't think people in the rest of the world will kind of talk about curators or gallerists or, but a cultural worker in South Africa, it's a very specific form of labor. And I think this is a good way to kind of also ask this human rights kind of question. Because cultural work has carried a lot, right? And one of the things that the Javett Foundation, and I remember just even as I was getting into this organization, one of their core things was the emancipatory potential of the arts, right? So the arts have always been the space that just yells freedom. But in a modern context, we have, quite a contested version of freedom. It's not a neutral thing. So I wonder what you think about, like that shattering, but what about like the person, like what about, which is what I enjoyed about the book. It's this moment between this person shattering all of these stereotypes, but also the human being involved in this entire process.
She has a husband, she has a family, grandmother, so that is so true, the human cost of it. And again, apropos our celebration of human rights, yes, the arts definitely have potential. We are a testament to that. We work in the space, so we understand the power of the arts. And so we should never shy away from the symbolic importance of stories like these and telling these stories in the best manner that we can.
Yes.
Yourself as a curator, because you have the collection here, you as curators, you guys have the collection here, so you are able to retell the story of the collection or even the stories in the collection in a certain way. But at the same time, the story of the individuals that are involved in this. And our country has many unresolved issues. We were just talking about this before.
We were.
Many unresolved issues. But what this project shows is there is a potential of some kind of restorative justice.
Okay.
At the end of the day, it was a wealthy white man who had this unique relationship with Bongi Domo. And by the way, before the project commenced, so they met for the first time in 2016, so they didn't know each other. You can't say they had this long-standing relationship, right, where Michael went to someone he was familiar with and said, come on, can you just... Michael just wanted someone who could bring his vision to life. So that's important. You have this wealthy white man, and I don't want to overemphasize the fact that he's wealthy, but that's part of our historical reality.
To be a patron of the arts implies wealth.
That's right. But what did he do with it? He said he was prepared in one of the very rare instances in South African art history, because if you look at the nature and character of other kind of philanthropic engagements with putting up collections in the country, they don't follow this kind of dynamic. He was prepared to give money to a black woman. So again, restorative justice. Reparative justice. No matter how people can say, I mean, there was criticism.
There's that chapter, like, I think that's one of the most fascinating parts of the book. There's an art critic who is mentioned here, and his first chapter, when his first engagement, is so critical.
Of course.
Rightly so. But by the end of the process, and when we are able to see what the collection actually does versus what was said, because I think that's also one of the big issues in this kind of world, is that what is said and what is done is very different. But if we are honest, you did an incredible bit of work to be able to juxtaposition both intention
versus
reality. And you held the results and the space for that. So that restorative tract is really, really important.
It is.
And it's also, I think for me, our curatorial director always says, the archive is an invitation. So I think for young artists, I think this is a really wonderful invitation to go and find.
To kind of close this off. Archive is an invitation.
The archive is continuing. The absences and the silences and the notes, whoever's in the archive is by choice.
Wow.
So we are invited to contest, but also to add our own voices and our own narratives. So I think you did a wonderful job of kind of centering a very human figure in a very institutional place, in a quite contested environment.
Highly contested.
But the purpose of the book and the challenge, or again, invitation, depending on where you look at it, is to see yourself in these works, is to come and garner hope, is to come and see, the value of a contemporary versus historical relationship. And I think that's a great place to end, because one of the big things that Javett has been able to do, and we say the Javett Art Center, and Michael Javett obviously passed last year, but one of the things that Javett is able to do, even just by design, is always put you in a position to reflect on both the contemporary as well as the historical. And we don't only focus on the retrospect, but we also make space, because in that bridge moments that Michael and Mambongi and others envisioned, you have this space that just holds space.
Yeah, it does. And here we are, right? Having this conversation, isn't? And to your point around the criticism that was provided about the project when it was first made public, is a valid criticism. Oh, isn't this window dressing? Oh, you are calling the collection the Bongi Domo collection, but it's here in an institution founded by a white benefactor at a University of Pretoria, which is historically white. All of these things.
There was a lot of baggage.
Yeah, completely. You use the word contested, but you are so correct that the invitation is there, and we have to take it up. You've taken it up in the role that you have. I took it up with my involvement in the book, and I tried to be as sincere as I could and tried to honor the story as best I could. But I love your statement that everyone should be able to see themselves in the artworks and they can actually. Black, white, Indian, foreigner, tourist, you can see yourself. This is a story of us as human beings. Yeah, it's a story of humanity. Really, it is. And my closing statement will be, there can be all the criticism about the project. One can also praise it and say, oh, it did all of these things. But from my side, I can confirm with certainty that from Mambongi, Michael Javett, you guys at the Javett-Up Center, our partners, the University of Pretoria, the folks at the Javett Foundation, one thing for certain is that this project has been embedded in Ubuntu.
That is a wonderful place to end. Yeah. Thank you so much, Funzo, for your time.
Lindo, thank you. Love coming here all the time, and they should come, right?
Yeah. Everybody come visit us at the Javett-Up Center out here in Pretoria, the heart of art in Tshwane.